Hey guys, this is Joey with Harvesting Strength. So, what I want to do is talk about advanced tactics and strength. And I know that's kind of like a very broad statement, but I think it'll be fun if every once in a while I can kind of bring up different topics in strength that are a little bit more advanced than the norm. And one of the things I think about is something I learned a while back, and I thought it was a really good concept to help. And it's this whole idea of getting stronger on a 5 day split, 4 days a week. So this might end up looking like something that's been done before through other people and different ideas. Maybe I'm just naming it differently or something like that. But what this is going to do is this is going to help you have more opportunities to have variety with your training and to elevate your training and to also elevate your rest and performance. So there's a lot of great benefits to it. But the big catch on this is the fact that it's a 5 day split, 4 days a week. So I'm not talking about one day being a two a day or anything crazy like that, because I've learned through some people that I work with as clients. They've told me, hey, I think I can get my bench stronger, but I think I need to bench more times a week. So I'll tell them, how many times are you trying to bench? And they'll say, I think 3 or 4 times. And I think that's just way too much. And if you're that person who's currently doing that and actually is very successful, then that's great. That's good for you. But for me, and from what I understand and from how I want to promote myself in the business that I operate, I don't think that's a very great plan. And I think there's some things that we can do in this presentation to show you maybe a different way to go about your business. So again, the 5 day split, 4 days a week has a unique catch to it when you say that statement, and here's why. But before we get into it, always I want to put a disclaimer out there, and I want you to know that when you read this to yourself, it says, I, the viewer of this document, recognize that exercise might be difficult and strenuous, and that there could be dangers inherent in exercise for some individuals. So read through this, make sure that you understand that you are not forced to do any of these things. These are just recommendations, and these are just things that I think are going to help elevate your performance. So let's get straight into it. One of the things that I've heard from people is, hey, I want to, do more lifts a week or yada, yada, yada. But another thing I hear from people is that I'm not sore. So does that mean I'm doing something wrong? So I've heard this recently, and although I'm empathetic with the statement, like I kind of understand what you're trying to tell me, it's still frustrating because you don't have to be sore to have a good session. Now, people who do workouts for types of stress management, like that physical exertion to exercise, I get where you're coming from with this, where you want to be sore, you kind of want to know that you did something and you really want to just let the energy out. But for people who want to elevate their performance for strongmen, for powerlifting, you have to treat your training differently. It can't always be about the glitz and the glamour. There's got to be various components to your lifting, and sometimes some of those glamorous and vanity types of components to your training have to take a back seat when it comes to performance. Now, you can do an off season and you can get as sore as you want. You can, work your biceps as much as you want. That's on you. But if you were to come to me, or if you want to talk about elevating your deadlift, your bench, your log press, you really have to have a different mindset. So what else is there to debunk besides the soreness, the multiple days a week of lifting? You don't have to be sore to work out. Working out has to be fun. Working out should be enjoyable, yes, but also winning is enjoyable. So when you go into a session, like I've had with people where they tell me, yeah, can you throw in this or can you do this? I mean, I don't know. I don't ever feel like I'm going to be at the mercy of someone. If you came to me, you came to me for a reason. And I'm going to let you know right off the bat, if you're trying to do that kind of bit where you want to just work out for fun, that's fine, but understand that you're not going to get the results you want if you're performance-based. And what I mean by that is, if you're coming to me because you want to be a better strongman or a powerlifter, don't expect the workouts to be glitzy and things like that. The whole goal is to win. And if you don't think that's enough to make it fun, then maybe you have to reevaluate yourself. Like I mentioned earlier, I've heard a statement, my bench sucks, so I train it 4 times a week. I don't like that idea. And it'll make more sense as we go through this presentation. My glutes are trash, so I train them every day. Do not do that. You might have deficiencies, but you got to understand you need to have exercise selection that's appropriate to you and your movement, but also you need a lot of rest as well. And then the last statement, I need my routine to always change to confuse my muscles. This, again, is for the wrong population. If you are a part of the population that wants to go for a world record bench press, um, we're not trying to do that, always change to confuse the muscle. There needs to be variations and a progression. So maybe you start here, and then as time goes on, the intensity goes up, the rigor goes up, and the variations go up. So maybe a variation is the pause bench, and then the dead pause bench press, or not dead pause, the dead bench, and then maybe chain resisted dead bench, things like that. You don't want to just always do different things, especially every day or every week, just because you see it through everybody else. Just know that Instagram, although it's a good place to maybe find, different organizations and groups and information, doesn't mean that everything posted is correct. It might be worse than Wikipedia, because when I was younger, you would take Wikipedia's word for it and you would cite it, but your professor would be so upset if you did that. And I think that should be the same case for Instagram, TikTok. Not everything you find is true. So working out is fun, training is difficult. That is something that I live by. I know training can also be fun because of the winning component to it, but just understand, Ronnie Coleman, I love Ronnie Coleman. He busted his butt and he worked as hard as he could. But I'm sure if you asked him, there'd probably be some times where he said, training was super difficult. And that's the thing. You guys, if you're performance-based, you have to accept that. Training is going to be difficult. And if it's not difficult, and if you're the kind of guy that just walks around and proclaims that RPE 4 is RPE 10, if those statements mean anything to you, if you're the person who says that, then you really need to reevaluate yourself, because ask anyone from any other sport, volleyball players, football players, rugby players, hockey players, they go through some really tough times. And I think we have become a really reduced population in the world of strength with a reductionist mindset where we always think, man, if I train too hard, I'm going to regress. I don't think anything's going to regress more than your mindset. So I think you weak-minded people who think strength training needs to be easier, then you're wrong. And I say that with so much passion because I just really get upset when there's these gurus who tell you, don't train too hard, you're going to regress. You won't regress unless you actually stick with that mindset for an extended amount of time. But like I talked about it before, you start here and you elevate your performance. And sometimes it's going to get hard. But the thing about it is this, even though it's not truly linear because you build up, you start over, you build up, you start over, your baseline is always changing. So even if you started here and built up and took a step down, this step of regression is not as low as the previous one. So even if it has a little bit of a zig and a zag to it, remember your baseline's always increasing. So at the end of the day, we need to be more tough. And that might be another advanced tactic I talk about, is there's not a lot of grit anymore with strength. And it's very frustrating because if you look back in time, like the people like Ronnie Coleman, and even before Ronnie Coleman, there are people who busted their ass to make this sport, or these sports of strongman, powerlifting, bodybuilding, they made these sports what they are today because of their hard work. So definitely pay respect to these people. And even if they did the right thing or the wrong thing, they still built it up for where you now have a platform to talk about it. Because if they didn't do that stuff, you would have nothing to talk about at this point. So there's some rules to performance training. Again, we're talking about the population who wants to get better in strength. So bench press, log press, your yoke, even bodybuilding, because that is a sport of itself. If you want to elevate your performance, there's certain rules, and these are the rules that I like to follow. You need to have a plan. This includes a calendar for pacing and guidelines per cycle. You got to have a plan because here's the thing. If you aimlessly train and just hope for the best, nothing's going to work out well. If you keep up with my posts, you'll hear people talk about it over and over and over. Where they'll say, "I love being on a plan because even if the plan is great, or even if the plan could be better, the plan is the plan. So now I can mentally rehearse, or I can mentally prepare for things that are to come. So now I have expectations for myself." That's what a plan does. It puts expectations on yourself. And I think that alone elevates your performance versus not having a plan. Set the tone early on. So for performance training, you really want to hit the weak points and the strong points to be balanced out. So even if your weak point is off your chest and your strong point's your lockout, you want to work both ends, but the fact that you can disassociate the two and differentiate the two and work both and break down both in a plan, that's so much better than just picking random exercises. So you definitely want to know how to evaluate your movement to elevate your movement with plans and exercise selection, etc. Carefully choose exercises to build your full anatomy. So as much as you push, you should pull. So when you have the plan and you can read it out loud, you might be able to look at the plan and say, "Hey, I did 150 reps of pressing, but I only did 100 reps of pulling." You can actually quantify that and give you a guideline to be better about it. So right off the top of my head, if you had someone do 3 sets of 10 on dumbbell bench press, then you might want to have someone do 3 sets of 10 on dumbbell rows, or maybe more pulls because maybe their anatomy shows that they have some kind of slouch or bad postural balance. It's not that easy with strength though, because there's going to be some exceptions to the rules. So I think for a majority of people, if you can go 1-to-1, that's a good starting point. And there's more exceptions to go, but we don't want to waste too much time talking about that. And then start with growth, promote power through training. So when you start the training process, hopefully it's a 12 to 16 week split. Always start off with growth, because the more the muscle fibers are dense, the more power and force production can exist. If someone wants to argue that or make me feel bad or reduce me because of saying that, then go for it. But I'm just going big topics. Bigger muscles have more potential for force development. I don't need to sit here and talk about biomechanics any more than that. So what happens when you hit a wall and can't get any stronger? This is where I try to do the 5-day split with 4 days a week. So a 5-day split, So a 5-day split usually goes like back, chest, legs, shoulders, and arms. But what we can do is we can find our weak points and bias our training to maybe have more frequency of certain movements exist in our program. So we'll get to that in a second, but like it says right here in the bullet point, start off with an evaluation to see where your weak points are, whether you're building for size or strength. So maybe you have smaller pecs, maybe you have bad leg strength. Go to the next bullet point and it says create a split that's conducive to your needs and start to stagger training to your benefit. So training a 5-day split 4 days a week does entail the idea that not every body part will be trained evenly each week. So the goal of this approach, and I'm going to go ahead and fix this word because it's bothering me. The goal of this approach is to trigger growth and performance using a staggered approach. Allow more recovery time and to work harder on specific parts of the anatomy every few days. So what this means is that you might train chest Monday of this week, but because you're going 4 days and then that 5th day bleeds into the next week, you might not train chest again until next Tuesday. But at the same time, you still are mixing in and blending in movements that might work the pecs a little bit on other days. But the big thing is that I think the harder you can go and more time to recover, the better your performance will become. And this is something that's truthful because I actually do that. I actually go with that mindset. So I'll talk a little bit more about mine in a minute, but an example, like I said, about a 5-day split is it goes back, chest, legs, shoulders, arms. But let's say you're wanting to elevate your squat. So on back day, maybe you start off with speed squats and then go into back. So then later, when you go back to legs, you can just focus on the heavy stuff. You don't have to worry about the speed stuff. So now your leg day can be longer and you can have other exercises you choose from besides just the speed squats. And plus, that allows you to squat twice that week or twice in a few days. So notice how I went from this split to this split, and I just kind of changed priority on some certain things. Maybe like this one too. Remember, the split should be back, chest, legs, shoulders, and arms. But on this one, it says back, heavy chest, legs, heavy or light shoulders. Maybe you vary it. So maybe if you go heavy shoulders, that means on the next day, it's speed pressing, and that's more vertical pressing, or not vertical pressing, but more flat bench pressing than overhead pressing, because that's what I think about with the shoulders is more overhead. So it's vertical versus, well, they're both vertical, but I don't know. I'm trying to just explain the fact that one day could be a heavy shoulder and then a speed press the next. Or if you're doing light shoulders, more explosive stuff, then you do the heavy pressing on this fifth day. So this actually makes it to where maybe you're doing 3 days out of 5 some kind of press, but 2 of the days are heavy and then 1 of them are light. And then on the deadlift focus, it's on the deadlift focus. Again, I just want to reiterate that I've focused so far on squat, bench. On the deadlift focus, on your back day, it could just be heavy pulls, so heavy deadlifting, variations of deadlifting, chest, legs, and speed pulls, so speed deadlift there. So within a few days, you do speed reps, back and biceps. So I kind of changed the shoulders to back and bicep, and then shoulders and triceps. So this one wasn't as conducive to the original, but I have a little bit more of a focus on the deadlift because that's actually something I do. My best deadlift was 650 with a belt, and I know that's not great. But the other day I did 635 super fast without a belt. So I imagine with the belt and to peak out training, maybe I could be, above 650, like 660, 665, 670. My goal is 700. So I think that this plan, even though it's not truly like the original 5 days, it's still kind of close and very resemblant of that. While I allow this screen to load, I'm going to plug in my computer before I forget. Okay. So how to work this. This is kind of the end of the presentation. If you have more questions, feel free to contact me. We can talk about it. But let's say the 5-day split that was regarding my deadlift. Let's say this deadlift focused 5-day split is broken down into A, B, C, D, and E day. So what happens is on Monday, because I usually start the week on Monday in my head, I would go A, B, rest, C, D, rest. And then I would come back and then do E on Monday, and then A, and then rest. So now you're kind of seeing like all the letters go diagonally down the chart. So that means you're getting potentially 8 or 9 days, because right here on the B workout, which is chest, if I did this Tuesday, the next week I would do it on Thursday because of the rest day in between. That's giving me more time to recover. And because you're training so hard, you need that recovery. For those people who talk about central nervous system fatigue, understand that you have to be at a really elevated percentage. I believe it's like closer to 90%, where you need 48 to 72 hours. But this elevates that rest even more, so you have even more time to feel springy and back into action. Central nervous system is the one that takes the brain and sends it throughout the body, the peripheral nervous system. They work in conjunction to get the messages out to the your body's anatomy to perform movement, and then you get feedback and send it back to your brain. It's just like the working connection between the mind and the body. But if your central nervous system has gone through a brutal workout, but it's documented that it takes time to recover. So maybe if you go to a heavy workout the next day, there's not a great mind-body connection, if you will. But I think in this one, because we're talking about one day being pulls and then you won't pull again heavy till the next 8 or 9 days, there's just so much time in between that can give your body time to rest its muscle, joints, body, the mind, so you can come back and look even better. And with the staggered approach, what's nice too is you might not necessarily deadlift heavy a lot that month. And even if you get to a peak and you want to change it to where you do heavy pulls every other A workout. So what that means is like maybe you do a heavy pull here, maybe on the program, this needs to be a lighter pull, and then you go back to another heavy pull. You're not doing a heavy pull until 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 12, like 16 days. So that means twice in that month you would do a heavy pull. That could be really good for your performance. And there's a lot of ways to approach that, but that would be, again, something you have to contact me about. But there's another way to do this 5-day split too. What if you took the same idea and did double rests instead of just 1 day rests? So I changed the week to Sunday on this one, so I should have actually done it on Monday, but it is what it is now. But if you go rest, AB, rest, rest, CD, rest, rest, EA, rest, rest. So now it's 2 on, 2 off. Now you can actually have even more time if your training is even heavier. So it might be where maybe the first 6 weeks you do this, and then the last 10 weeks you do this with double rests. And I can even do this better to where I could do double workouts, and then I can do like a jump day, rest, double workouts, a jump day. And the reason why I put a jump day there is because plyometric training is going to obviously elicit more power development. You doing those jumps can, really elevate your ability to have more dynamic hips and bleed into your training. And then you get that next day to rest and then go back into it. I can't imagine any split being where you would find it often to where you double up on workouts and you're not going to do some kind of lower body routine, if you will. So I guess unless you go back and biceps and then shoulders and triceps, that might not be, a pulling day clearly. But all in all, this is another advanced tactic to think about as well. So if I delete though, I'm just gonna leave it the way it is. So you could take your first 6 weeks like this, and that was just arbitrarily decided. I didn't really have a thought behind it. But maybe if it's a 16-week split, this could be the first 6 weeks of just hypertrophy and growth, then the last 10 weeks of performance. This gives you more rest in between, and then maybe you ponder, do you really need a deload? Maybe you just kind of drop the percentage off for a couple days and then jump back on. It's just another advanced tactic to think about. But this is the end of the presentation, so all in all, I just want you to understand that if you're the kind of person who really loves performance training and you want to elevate your lifts, this is a good way to go about your business, to think more creatively and to promote all the components that you need for performance training. More rest, more percentages, and more intent with your movement. This is clearly a big focus on the deadlift, but if you wanted to focus primarily on squat, you could take this approach, on bench this approach, and then just use these staggered days or weeks to really work your best effort in that sense. Okay? So again, if you want more information, feel free to contact me. My name is Joey Lucero with Harvesting Strength. Just feel free to contact me. We can talk more about this stuff. And hopefully you found this information fruitful and something that you can take with you and maybe apply to your training as well.